For the most part, Stephan is right about Airbnb and the Airbnb bust. As a landlord, a regular real estate guy, just don't do it. You're gonna get your butt kicked. He's right. But his video, for all of his genius and research, please check out the video for a great dissertation. He approached it as a real estate guy, as an investor and a landlord, and somebody who likes to use Airbnb. But he did not approach it as a seasoned Airbnb professional, nor as a business owner, hospitality operator, anything even in the ballpark. And for the most part, this isn't really a problem because a lot of people here on YouTube are trying to size up real estate investments. Should I buy that property? Should I put it on Airbnb? But that's where it changes. Should I put it on Airbnb is a business question. It's a hospitality question. It's not a real estate question. He said something so cool at the end of this video that really tunes into the truth about this. He said that inefficient operators are going to go out of business. What does that mean though? What is an inefficient operator? And when he said your unique listing with a grammarly written description could outperform the market potentially, that there's still opportunity, he alluded to something too, and the sponsor got in the way. He's about to talk about unique listings that would outperform the competition. Stephan knows this truth, that there are listings that are recession-proof, that are oversupply-proof because they just slap so hard in the space. And he knows that there are businesses out there that have gone public for the tune of nearly $2 billion even as a rental arbitrage company, because running a good business in the space can still be profitable. So where is the money in the Airbnb bust is what we're going to ask and answer right now. Let's go. Welcome back, YouTube world. So quick update on his video. He gives you the history of Airbnb. He kind of gives you the rise and fall of it over the last few years, with a couple things I think that should be hit a little harder. COVID-19 was a big deal for Airbnb. What it did is it forced people to stay at home. It also forced landlords to fear not getting rent payments. Evictions against tenants that stop making payments created this vulnerability on both sides of the market. The traveler and the host were more predisposed to short-term rentals because the landlords are like, I'm not going to get my rent anyway. Sure, I'll put it on Airbnb. And tenants were stuck inside going, man, I'd really like just to travel. And revenge travel happened in 2020. I think that's one of the biggest factors to where we are today, which is that we have too many listings that are co-hosted, and travel is subsiding because people are, getting their needs met finally, and they're not locked up anymore. If you add in all that other smart stuff that he understands so well, like interest rates and inflation, it all adds into this one big equation, which is people are spending less money, and there's a lot of inventory position to take people's money, creating this supply and demand curve. He then goes and gives a nod to the concept of dynamic pricing, which is that people have to lower their prices to get bookings, talking more so about the price war or commoditization of short-term rentals. That does have merit, but where we need to take that farther is there's data behind this price war, information that hosts use to identify when to raise prices and when to drop them. And over 90% of hosts actually don't know what they're doing in this area of the business. That skill set, revenue management, is still very much a low barrier to entry competitive advantage, which is one of the few points of this video, how to have a unique listing that still makes money in the space. How does a hotel do it? That's a really cool question. Hotels hire revenue managers. There's somebody in the property trying to make sure that all 200 keys or 200 rooms inside of a hotel is full as often as possible. They have an occupancy percentage, which is the percentage of rooms that is booked every night. They would love to be 100%, but not everybody is. And there's a concept in the hotel space called contribution margin. That hotel will cost nearly the same amount of money to run it almost every single day. And the reason why is their light bill doesn't go up or down that much whether or not you stay there. The cost to insure the property is going to be the same regardless of their occupancy percentage. I've actually never seen an insurance policy that invokes occupancy percentage to raise the rates. Their mortgage or their debt service for the building is not going to go up based on occupancy. That's going to be fixed. There's going to be other factors that are largely fixed. They're still going to invest a lot of money in staff. Concierge has got to be there whether or not you show up. If their occupancy is 70% or 95%, concierge still at the front. Their restaurant is still going to be open. Staff at restaurants mostly make tips aside from the kitchen, which still has to stay open. They're still going to have housekeepers every single day because there is an opportunity for last minute bookings in hotels, and every single day they still go in and clean hotels that people are staying in. So there's still a lot of hotel upkeep or turnover. These are mostly fixed costs. They vary so very little whether you're at 60% occupancy, 60% full, or 100% full. So the concept of contribution margin is they're trying to grab as much revenue, getting up to nearly 100% occupancy as they can, even by lowering their prices a lot. Because if at the end of the month they have $100,000 of expenses and they were half full, making $90,000, they would lose $10,000. But if they could make another $40,000 on the other half of their occupancy, that would only be $130,000, but their expenses are still basically $100,000. So now they've made $30,000 instead of losing 10. If half their building fills up at $90,000, they're not expecting the last half to fill up at $90,000 also. That is not something that they're going for. They are willing to adjust prices to reach the max occupancy and revenue average that they can get. Occupancy percentage and ADR, average daily rate. These are the things that they care about as a hotel. But when I spoke at a convention in Houston, I asked people who here knows what the multi-calendar is, and maybe 10% of the entire convention raised their hand. These are all operators in the space, people with Airbnb properties. Now, you may not know what a multi-calendar is, but it is the dashboard where you look at your properties, nights, and rates. This is where you would change your prices. Somebody who does revenue management would look at the multi-calendar on Airbnb to make prices. And yes, a hotel that has an Airbnb presence, they are not only using a channel manager. For those of you guys who understand a channel manager and you made that assumption, that's wrong. A revenue manager will still use the Airbnb platform to change some of their prices because of the rule sets feature that Airbnb offers. In order to make some key changes on an Airbnb, you have to use rule sets to do that. So yes, they still use a channel manager, which is a place that all the channels, VRBO, Booking.com, Expedia, Priceline, Airbnb, they all come together. They will use that channel manager like HostFully or HostHub, and then they will use Airbnb's platform independently as well. This is an important distinction of the hotel industry that is still trailing far behind in the short-term rental industry. Understand that what we're doing in the short-term rental space is much more like running a hotel than it is like owning a property, than being a landlord. Wouldn't you agree? Now, many landlords don't understand this because they give their properties to co-hosts, which are property managers that specialize in short-term rentals. But that's the thing too, that's still a young industry also. And there's a lot of little startup companies that claim to be good at what they do that aren't necessarily good. I have so many friends here in Dallas who have used co-hosts that have been okay, or good, or not okay. And there's no way aside from maybe references to tell whether or not somebody is good. But I'll tell you what, a lot of these landlords have a lot of trust. They've got a lot of trust considering their properties are wildly expensive and they've got a mortgage to pay. So I'm saying it's a mixed bag for co-hosts. Some really know what they're doing, some kind of know what they're doing, and some have no clue. The co-hosts that I know personally, that I respect, have spent years trying to understand revenue management, pricing strategy, the game theory within it, because even in a world of oversupply, there's a way to still get bookings by doing something else that other people aren't doing, just with price alone. This is something to master. Now, a lot of the people who watch this YouTube channel are starting to learn these things. But when I look at the data on how many views a pricing strategy video here on this channel will get, that exposure is less than 1% of the host community. And I will tell you that this is an important distinction because I'm not the only educator in the short-term rental space, but I am the only educator that talks revenue management and pricing strategy at a high level. There actually is not another place publicly to learn pricing strategy. What this shows you is that any hosts that do get into the revenue management section of short-term rentals, they usually just plug in something like Wheelhouse or Price Labs, and they expect that to be good enough. And further, on a live call with some of my coaches today, somebody referred to Price Labs as their pricing strategy software, not a price automation software or a pricing algorithm. They literally thought that Price Labs runs an entire pricing strategy that changes day to day, week to week, month to month, is what you would presume he thinks by the way he was describing his software. So we had to re-educate the group and let people know that Price Labs or Wheelhouse will run an algorithm on supply and demand and just raise prices up and down based on that alone. And then you can use some of their features to create other conditional increases or decreases in price. But even that is still just the level 1 of a actual pricing strategy. So first things first, if you want to survive the Airbnb bust, learn dynamic pricing and learn it well, because you will outperform 90-something% of all other short-term rentals because very few people understand revenue management. And you're on the right channel for that. But moving on to other unique things, you can intersect what I would call underserviced amenities. Now, I'm doing a webinar on March 13th. I'm doing a 2-hour webinar on market research. You need to find out what those underserviced amenities are. And you also need to find out what other hosts are really doing well in order to copy the things that are working. So 13th, 5 p.m., it's going to be a 2-hour-ish webinar. It might run a little longer because I realize my syllabus is actually getting rather big for what should only be a 2-hour webinar. And if you cannot make it, yes, you can have the recording instead. I'm pricing this one for the masses because the last time I did a webinar on market research, it was a whole day boot camp for people with dozens of properties. And it's about time that I brought this education down to a level that everybody can understand. It's only fair. An example of an underserviced amenity would be in one area where hot tubs are popular, maybe not many people have hot tubs. But for example, another thing, if you have a lot of houses in your neighborhood, and there's a lot of really nice houses. How many houses have gyms? Probably almost none. And there is a toggle on Airbnb for gym. So let's say some people are traveling to your city and some people are like fitness buffs, and you're one of the only people with a gym in the garage. Like you take half the garage and turn it into a gym. Say you did that. You now have a custom amenity that very few people have, which will allow you to show up in search conditionally when somebody clicks the gym button. This example is not guaranteed to make you money. You could put a gym in a house and it might not be the right underserviced amenity for your area. We cannot guarantee that everybody in your area is going to want a gym. But if we start looking at intersections of multiple amenities, if somebody's going to drive an electric car, they're probably going to want an EV charger. Now, if somebody wants an EV charger, do you think they might want a pet-friendly space because they have a dog? Quite possibly, you could be running into some hipsters from Austin driving their Tesla up to Dallas or vice versa, and they're going to bring their dog. You know, and if that's the case, you might keep matcha instead of just coffee and tea. You might put some matcha in your coffee station, and you might get some bookings because people think that you're a way cool host for having matcha. Ceremonial grade matcha, by the way. These can be low-cost changes, just little thoughtful touches that start to separate you from the oversupply. And the reason why this can work is because Airbnb's algorithm is actually meant to kill off listings in times of oversupply. They have to decide who lives and who dies. And if they just evenly distributed all listings amongst too few customers, let's say there's 100 listings in an area and there's 200 customers, so everybody could have 2 reservations each, that's not enough for anybody to pay the bills, and all 100 hosts would quit. Now, let's say natural, like competitive advantage is in there. That might mean that 20 or so hosts get 3 bookings, and a bunch of hosts get 2 bookings, and the rest of the hosts get 1. A lot of them are still gonna quit. You might actually have 70% of your inventory go out. So instead, they take those 200 bookings and they shove them in the upper 35% and just make sure that their best 35% stay fed. So they're gonna lose 65. But keep 35 in a scenario where they start to, with an algorithm, favor the best listings and actually start to shove away listings that they don't even want to show anymore because the data says they can't feed everybody. You need to make the algorithm think that you're interesting and popular and valuable. It's that way Airbnb is going to show you. In that final heat of listings that you show up in, you need to make sure that you have contrast against your competition. What we've done is we've moved to dark walls in most of our places that were underperforming. The ones that were performing just fine before the bust, we made no changes. But the ones that were underperforming and started to get caught in the algorithm spiral, we switched to dark walls, no cleaning fee. We've tried a few different things, split tested it, and we've made some changes to keep our listings in the game. We had to adapt, and contrast with dark colors has been one of the ways that we've been adapting. If you have a great listing, like a big one that should be expensive, then I would encourage you to maybe look at your interior design style and see if you want to do a full makeover. I want you to focus on the floor, the walls, and the ceiling. I want you to do some crazy stuff. Some of the best performing listings in Dallas, their ceilings are interesting, and very few places have interesting ceilings, and this was obviously intentional. They've created a full space that is just awesome, and you can do this too. Don't sell yourself short. Because I believe this to be so vitally important for 2023, I went out and I found an interior designer who specializes in Airbnbs, and I brought them on as a coach in my program because I was like, our students need somebody in real time giving them feedback on listings to improve their listings. This is going to be one of the hills to die on per se, and I don't want any of my students dying on any hills. I want them making money. In summary, market research will show you what to do and what not to do, because some things will just work, go for that. Some things everyone else is doing and it's not worth your time. Some things not only work, but almost no one's doing it and you really want to punch a hole in that opportunity. And some things are just sinkholes of loss because people just don't like some things. And you can find out through market research what listings do really well, what listings don't, and you can find out why. And that brings us to the efficient side. Inefficient operators will go out of business. Nearly a year ago, I warned that this would happen. I shot a video while traveling in New Mexico, go find it, about how short-term rental investors who are bringing in co-hosts to run their property are going to be inefficient because paying a co-host their fee is fat in their deal. If every time you get $100, you have to give $25 away to a manager, you now have $75. If you could do all of that yourself, you could keep all of that money. If you got to some scale where you needed staff, you'd give away about $10 at scale with staff and you'd have a lot of free time. If your co-host does not endeavor to lower or control your housekeeping costs, you're going to collect $200 and $100 of it's going to leave to a housekeeper, and then the manager gets $25 and you have $75 left. Where your competitor neighbor who's got a better co-host, they're going to collect $200 but only give $50 to a housekeeper, maybe even just $40. Then out of the $160 that's left, they're going to keep their fee $40 and the owner gets $120. You got $75 and the other owner got $120 because their total housekeeping cost was different. The co-host also made more money because there's more net revenue after the housekeeping. So a smart co-host is always laboring to lower the housekeeping costs if they're good, if they care, because this does increase net revenues. But like I said, many co-hosts aren't really that good at this. This was a cool opportunity to get into, low barrier to entry. I don't have money to buy a house and I'm too afraid to sign some leases and do rental arbitrage. So let me convince a landlord to do a rev share with me. Most of these co-hosts are little mom and pop co-hosts that don't have a degree in hotel and restaurant management. They don't have a hospitality degree. Almost as few of them aren't even real estate agents either. So you hiring housekeepers by the hour to control your cost and not using a co-host would instantly be way more cost effective than those other two. Where one got $75, the other got $120, you'd get $160. And at scale, you'd get $150. That's super good. You're doubling one guy and you're beating the other guy by about another 20-25%. Crush it. But that's why this channel exists. If you care to get into this game or to stay in this game if you're already in this game, you need to be a good business owner and understand the game that you're playing as a business owner. These videos are meant to be free for you, to be educational for you on how to do these things. This video did not teach you how to do revenue management, I understand, but there's a whole playlist on how to do revenue management on this channel. This video didn't teach you really much about how to do Airbnb, but there is a whole course for free on this YouTube channel as well. If you want to learn Airbnb, this is the nerdiest place to be on YouTube to learn it. And if you want some of my higher level teachings on market research because you're looking to expand, redesign your property, or get your first property, attend that March 13th webinar called Big Data. And if you miss it, you can still get the recording because market research is that important. Doing it better will make you more money on your property. Market research allows for more profit, hands down. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.